Good morning to all of you, and I welcome you to the lecture 1 of the new chapter, which is basically known as metallurgy. And in the book itself, it's the chapter number 6 by the name General Principle and Process of Isolation of Air. Make sure that you are not simply just watching the video. Take out your pens, take out your notebook, and it's a very essential thing. You have to feel it like you are sitting there in the class next to me. And make the notes as the slides goes on. As soon as I am writing, I am explaining each and everything, you should make a one point that you have to write. After writing the notes, just have a quick revision, go through the chapters, go through all the questions given in the book itself, and if you have any doubts, please ask in the WhatsApp group. Okay, so without any further wastage of the time, let's proceed with the chapter. You must first of all know the modes of occurrence of the elements. Elements occur either in the free state, which is also known as native state, or in the combined state. Free state, I mean to say that elements are not being easily attacked by the moisture, oxygen or CO2. Basically, they show the less tendency to have their chemical reaction with their moisture. For example, carbon, gold, platinum, silver, these are the elements which are likely to be exist in the free state. But when it comes to the combined state, they can easily be attacked, or you can say they can be easily be reacted by the moisture, O2, CO2, etc. Let's say for example Fe2O3, hematite, Al2O3, etc. Now coming on to the basic terminologies, first one is the minerals. Minerals are in the basic, you have in the studied also in the 6th, 7th, 8th, might be 7th or 8th class also. What is the basic difference between the minerals and the ore? Like if in the earth crust, I want to for example, if in the earth crust I want to take out the aluminium, and if I go and take out 1 kg piece of aluminium, so that piece of aluminium is basically not the pure aluminium, because it contains many earthy impurities which you basically known as gangue, which should be stuck with that aluminium piece metal, as well as many of other metals, unwanted metals are also being stuck with those aluminium metal. So basically what I have taken it out from the earth crust is not the metal, it is basically the mineral. Okay, so the minerals definition is the naturally occurring chemical substances in the form of which the metals occurs in the earth along with the impurities. Now from the minerals we try to extract ores, and from the ores we'll try to extract the impure metal, and that from impure metal we finally do the refining procedures using vapor phase refining, zone refining, distillation, etc. We will going to study later in this chapter, and we finally get the pure metal. So students, in this chapter basically we will study the how the things work out for the extraction of the metal from those of the minerals. Coming on to the next definition is about the ores, the mineral from which the metal is conveniently and economically extracted. So many of the students get confused between the minerals and ores. Let me explain you by taking the example. Let's say students, aluminium has two chief minerals like bauxite and clay. Both formulas should be learned by you, because it can even be asked in the boards or in the competitive level examination like JEE and NEET. So whenever you find that I have written any kind of formula, chemical formula of any ore or minerals, so please you'll have to learn that formula. Okay, I will not say again and again. So like aluminium has two minerals like bauxite and clay, but economically and conveniently you can extract the aluminium from bauxite but not from the clay. Okay, clay contains lesser amount of aluminium, clay contains more amounts of gangue particles, silica impurities, whereas bauxite does not. Okay, So let's say hypothetical example that you have 1 kg of bauxite and 1 kg of clay, both at the same time, and you have started your extraction process from both the minerals, bauxite and clay. After 1 week, you have successfully extracted the aluminium from the bauxite, but from the clay you have extracted aluminium, that too in the very lesser and the cheaper quantity, and that it has taken the 1 month. So which mineral has given you the metal more conveniently and economically? That is the bauxite. Therefore, bauxite is considered as the ore. Understood? So here we come across some simple conclusion that it's given in the note. All ores are the minerals. Bauxite is the ore as well as it is the mineral. But all minerals are not the ores. Bauxite and clay are the minerals, but only bauxite is the ore. Clay is not the ore of the aluminium. So keep remember this point. It can either become in the filling the blanks. All ores are minerals, but all minerals are not ores. So students, by this flow chart, I am going to summarize you the chapter, and I will tell you that what are the things and the process we are going to discuss later in this chapter. So it's a very short form. You are requested to note down all these points and the flow chart. First is the ore which you have economically and conveniently have been extracted from the mineral. This ore should be crushed and grinded using the large ball mills or the stamp mills so that you can get the powdered form. This powdered form is not even the concentrated, so we have to get the pure form. We have to get the concentrated ore. That's why we do the concentration of ore, or you can say we do the benefaction of ore. We're going to study each and everything in detail. It's just a summary, it's just a flow chart. Now the powdered ore can be concentrated using many methods, and some of the methods I have written over here, like leaching, froth flotation, ligation, mechanical separation, magnetic separation. Now after you have received the concentrated ore, the third step comes to be the conversion of the concentrated ore into its reducible form. Because if we want to extract the metal, the most convenient form to extract the metal is it from its metal oxides. So what we are going to do is, we are simply doing the oxidation procedure for the concentrated ores by calcination or roasting. They will give the metals in their oxides forms, and now it is very simple to reduce these metal oxides. The simple reduction is of the metal oxides. Okay, so what we are going to do is reduction of the ores to the metals by smelting procedure, hydrometallurgy, electrolytic reduction, so that we should get the crude metal, or you can also say a impure metal. So the final steps goes that from the impure metal to the pure metal, and that was the E point, purification and the refining of metals. And the purification or refining of metals can be done by the various procedures which I have written, like distillation, zone refining, vapor phase refining, Pauling, etc. So after the definition of minerals and ore and this flow chart, let's start in detail with the chapter. So moving on, next is the methods of concentration of ore, or you can say the benefaction of ore. What are the methods? Methods involves like froth flotation, electromagnetic separation, and hydraulic washing, ligation, etc., etc. Leaching, basically, which has been mainly asked in the board's examination. So before coming to the methods, that what are they, let us understand that what is the basically concentration of ore. I have already discussed previously that ores which are obtained from the earth crust are never pure. They are basically associated with the impurities. Remember? So here is the point written: ores as they are obtained from the earth crust are never pure. They are associated with the earthy and the siliceous impurities called gangue or matrix. The removal of these gangue particles, from the ores is nothing but the concentration of ore or the benefaction of ore. And before doing the benefaction of ores, we should remember one thing in our mind, that ores, when they are obtained in the nature, they are in the form of the big lumps. They should be crushed into the fine powders. First, we have to do the crushing of ores with the help of the crushers and the grinders. Okay, crushers means like what they will do, they will break the big lumps into the small pieces. This is known as the crushing of ores, and then these small pieces are finally reduced to a fine powder with the help of the ball mill and the stamp mill. Ball mill and stamp mills are the basically large steel tanks, or you can say there are the large balls made up of steel or iron. When they come in contact with each other, they just make sure that the small pieces of ore gets converted into fine powder. This process where you convert the small pieces of the ores into the fine powder is known as pulverization. This pulverization can come for 1 marks. Okay, now one by one we will going to discuss what are the methods of the concentration of ores. So students, the very first method for the concentration of ore is the hydraulic washing. As you see here that there is a simple diagram. This is known as the Wilfley table, where you can do the levication process. From this end, the fine ore particles with the impurities has been sent down, and from this extreme left hand side, the fine flow of water has been spread, the water current has been spread. Now due to the free flow of water, what is going to happen is the lighter earthy particles will be separated, or you can say the lighter earthy particles or the gangue particles or the impurity particles get over with the help of the water current, a free flow of water current, and the ore particles which are quite heavier will accumulated at this bottom side. You can see over here the red particles. Okay, so as given over here, hydraulic washing, the process by which the lighter earthy particles are freed from heavier ore particles by washing with the water, is called levication. The process is carried out in the special design tables called Wilfley tables, as I have shown you just now. The oxides examples, the oxide ores such as those of iron, hematite, tin, tinstone are usually concentrated by this method. So remember the last point, it can be asked in the fill in the blanks or MCQs type questions. Moving on to the next concentration method. So students, next method is the electromagnetic separation. As from the name itself, you can understood the principle lying behind this separation method or this concentration of ore method. The diagram shows a conveyor belt moving around the two rollers. This is a conveyor belt which is moving around the two rollers. One of the roller is having the electromagnetic in it. As the ore particles roll over the belt, from here the finely powdered ore has been rolled down. The magnetic particles are attracted by the magnetic roller. Okay. As a result, two heaps are formed separately. These are the two heaps. The heap collected below the magnetic roller contains the magnetic particles, while the heap formed away from the magnetic roller contains the non-magnetic particles. So, this process can be involved, just see the first point, if the ore or the impurities associated with it are magnetic in nature, then this method of separation is employed. For example, magnetite Fe3O4 and ore of iron are separated from non-magnetic siliceous gangue by this method only. Clear with this concept? I hope students, you all are just not seeing the videos. Be particular about the notes. That's why I have make such an elaborate notes, so that you guys should have in detail notes of all these stuff. So students, next coming up to the third concentration method, and it is the most important method. It has been frequently asked in the board examinations. It also contains many 1 marks questions. I will tell you. First of all, just have a basic idea about what is the Froth flotation process is. It is a beaker, and in the beaker it contains a suspension. Suspension is made up of water and the powdered ore. This black pen shows the water, blue pen shows the ore, and the green pen shows the gangue particles which are associated with the ore, because we are taking the impure ore. Now what happens is, when you rotate this paddle, the air from the above draws in and it will forms the froth. Froth being collected above the surface of this liquid will also take up the oil as well as the sulfide ores. Now, if we are taking oil and water, two things in this beaker, you know that oil being lighter, have the lighter density, will try to come up at the surface of the water. Oil, when it tries to come to the surface of the beaker, the froth will enhance this process. Froth plus oil plus sulfide ores will try to come at the surface, and the heavier particles along with the gangue particles and the water being heavier in nature will try to settle down. So what we are basically doing is, we are separating the sulfide ore particles with the gangue particles. So this is the basic principle which lies, it is written in the B point. This method is based upon the fact that the surface of the sulfide ores. Let me tell you the A point also, it's very important that Froth flotation process is just used for the concentration of the sulfide ores such as zinc blende, ZnS, copper pyrite, CuFeS2, which is also known as fool's gold, and the galena, PbS. This method, now the principle comes, which just now I have explained you. This method is based upon the fact that the surface of the sulfide ores is preferentially wetted by oils. Sulfide ores has been wetted by oils, while that of gangue is preferentially wetted by water. Gangue is preferentially wetted by water. So what will happen is that the water being heavier and oil being lighter, oil tries to come to the surface along with the sulfide ores and along with the froth, whereas the gangue and the water will try to settle down at this beaker when this rotating paddles draws in the airs from the above. What we have taken in the tank, we have taken the suspension which is made up of powdered ore and water as well as oils, and into this suspension we are added two things. These two things are very important. It has been frequently asked for the 1 marks question. Collectors and the froth stabilizer. Froth stabilizer are used so as to make or stabilize the froth. Froth stabilizer examples are given over there, cresol and aniline. It is very important. It has been mainly asked in the competition level like JEE, NEET. And the collectors, pine oil and ethyl xanthates, which enhance the non-wettability of the ore particles. Look, you are taking the two things. One is the sulfide ores and one is the gangue particles. You should make sure that sulfide ores should shows the wettability with oils, but it should not shows the wettability with water. So what are the collectors doing? Like pine oil, they are enhancing the non-wettability of the ore particles with water. The D and the last point saying that the suspension is violently started by the rotating paddle. This is basically the procedure how it went. So suspension is violently started by the rotating paddle which draws in the air, causing frothing. During this process, the ore particles which are preferentially wetted by the oil becomes lighter and thus rise to the surface along with the froth. And what about the gangue particles? Gangue particles, since they are showing the wettability with the water, and water being heavier in the density, will try to settle down inside this beaker, at the bottom of the beaker. Are you clear? So what happens when the froth has reached to the surface? It is skimmed off and it is allowed to collapse and finally dried to get the concentrated ore. You just write this point. What I am saying is the froth is skimmed off when it has reached to the surface of the beaker, then it is allowed to collapse and finally dried to get the concentrated ore. We are left with the very important thing in this topic, that is about the depressant. You just have a note of these things, and next we will continue with the depressants. It comes under froth flotation process only. So as I told you, this function of depressant has been usually asked for 1 marks. What is this depressant? Sometimes it happens that inside the beaker there is the formation of 2 types of sulfide ores. So what we have to do is we can only make a froth with only 1 type of sulfide ore. The another sulfide ore should be left behind with the impurities. So how can we do that? How is it possible that oil which we have basically preferentially wetted with the sulfide ores, and among them one of the sulfide ores should form the froth and another should not? So this difficult task is done by the depressant. Let's say for example the sodium cyanide. NaCN is used as a depressant to separate PBS from ZNS. We will take such type of a reagent as a depressant so that that thing can react with that particular sulfide but does not able to react with the another kind of sulfide. Like NaCN can easily react with ZNS to form this complex. Since it forms a complex and it becomes heavier, thus NaCN avoids ZNS to reach at the surface, and it prevents it from the formation of the froth. So under these conditions only PBS forms the froth and hence can be separated from the ZNS ore. So if asked that what is the function of depressant, you should write it is used to prevent 1 type of sulfide ore particles from forming the froth with the air bubbles. Clear, students? So come on to the next 4th type, which is the leaching. The leaching, it comes after froth flotation only. What we are going to study in this method is that the powdered ore is treated with some reagents. Those reagents includes might be acids, bases or any other chemicals which can dissolve the ore but not the impurities. Look, we are doing the concentration of ore. Why we are doing concentration of ore? Because we want to remove the impurities and we want the pure form of the ore. So our aim is to separate the impurities and to get the pure ore. So we have to mix a suitable reagent, and selectively we have to choose the reagent so that it can dissolve the ore but it does not react with the impurities. So it will become easier that the ore will be on the one side and the impurities get filtered off on the other side. So for example, in the leaching of the bauxite, let's see over here what I have written is, this process consists in treating the powdered ore with a suitable reagent such as acids, bases or other chemicals which can selectively dissolve the ore but not the impurities. Example, leaching of bauxite. The straightaway question can come for 2 marks. Explain the leaching of bauxite using Bayer's process. So here it's written that pure alumina Al2O3 is obtained from the bauxite ore by Bayer's process. The bauxite ore usually contains the 3 impurities: Fe2O3, SiO2 and TiO2. What we have to do? We have to separate these 3 impurities from this alumina. What we have to take is the suitable reagent. This reagent can be either acid, base or some other chemical. In this Bayer's process, we are going to use base called NaOH, because NaOH will react with the bauxite to form a complex. But these impurities will not be able to react with NaOH except for silica. TiO2 and Fe2O3 will not be able to react with NaOH. So here are the reactions that Al2O3.2H2O bauxite has been treated with the chemical, means you can say the aqueous solution of NaOH, to form a complex sodium meta-aluminate. Rest the impurities silica, except silica, all other remains undissolved. So they are easily filtered off. But the thing is, the problem we are facing is that SiO2 has also reacted with NaOH to form the sodium silicate. So it's not a big deal, it's not a big issue. We will again do some filtration process and this part will easily be separated from that complex. You just note all these things so that in the next slide I will make you understand how we will proceed further in this leaching process. So now the sodium meta-aluminate, the complex which you have obtained, is too much basic in nature. Why? In the formula itself you can see that 4 OH minus ions are present. So we will react this complex with CO2 so as to neutralize the reaction. CO2 is being added so as to neutralize the reaction or to keep the pH in decreasing level. समझ में आई बात? Thus, what happened is, in the leaching, what you have did? In the leaching, you have taken one complex, that is a base, NaOH. You have reacted with that ore which contains the impurities. That ore which we need the alumina forms the complex known as sodium meta-aluminate and rest of the impurities gets filtered off. This is the basic principle which lies behind the leaching. But what happened is, the complex which you have got over here is too much basic in nature. That's why the solution is very much basic. So as to keep the reaction in the neutralization way or to lower down the level of the pH, we have reacted this complex with the CO2. This will maintain the pH of the solution. And as soon as we react with this CO2, we will get Al2O3.XH2O, that is the hydrated alumina, and sodium bicarbonate will get filtered off again. So it's written over here, hydrated alumina is filtered, washed and finally heated to about 1473 Kelvin to get pure alumina. So Al2O3.XH2O, when heated, will loses its water of crystallization. We will get pure alumina, Al2O3 plus XH2O. So this procedure is fully known as the Bayes process. And sometimes I have already told you it will ask straight away in the 2 marks that explains the Bayes process. So you have to do the leaching of alumina. Similarly, you can also do the leaching of silver and the gold ores. I mean to say the leaching is used for extracting the precious metals like silver and gold by converting these metals ore into their soluble complexes. And the procedure where you do the leaching of silver and gold ore has been given by the scientist, and this scientist has kept this process name by his own name, MacArthur Forrest Cyanide process. So basically in this chapter you have to do quite of ratification things. You just need to understand some basic concepts, then you have to just mug up the things, especially the reactions and the name itself. And yes, temperature is also important, because if it asks the Bayes process, what the examiner will see that whether you are writing 1473 Kelvin or not, whether you are doing the reaction with CO2 or not, because these are the important key points which the examiners mark. So in MacArthur Forrest Cyanide process, what are the reactions? I'll just tell you, just have a look on this and just proceed to the next slide. In this process, the finely powdered argentite or the native silver or gold is treated with the dilute solution of KCN or NaCN. So what is this? This is that chemical which you are taking. While a current of air, means oxygen, is continuously passed. As a result, silver and gold oxidized, which then combine with Cn minus ions to form the complex, while the impurities remains unaffected, which are filtered out. Again, the principle of the leaching has came into the play, that the metal which you want is forming the complex with the suitable reagent and the impurities are getting filtered off, and it is the common reaction for both Ag and the Au. Let's say, for example, if you want to write the reaction for Ag, it comes 4Ag plus 8 Cn minus comes from this KCN or NaCN. You can write either, like I have taken 8 times NaCN plus 2H2O plus O2 will give you 4 times AgCN square minus plus 4 NaOH. So this complex will form 4 times Na. So I hope you have understood this reaction. Again, you can in place of M you can write Au. You will get the reaction for the gold also. Clear? So next, moving on to the reduction process, where we will study the calcination and roasting. So before moving on to the roasting and calcination, let's first of all study that what is the flux and the slag. These two terms will be highly used in the extraction of the metals. So a flux is a substance which combines with the gangue. You remember now? These are the earthy impurities which are associated with the ores. A substance which combines with the gangue to form a light, easily fusible material is called flux. And this, the easily fusible material, the lighter material is known as the slag. Means जब भी कोई gang flux के साथ मिलेगा, it will form slag. Being lighter, the slag can be easily removed from the surface of the fused metal. There are two types of flux: acidic flux, basic flux. Acidic flux, what it does, it combines with the basic gangue, and the basic flux, what it does, it reacts with the acidic gangue. So when the ore is associated with the basic impurities like lime, FeO, etc., the flux uses the acidic substance such as silica borax. And if the ore is associated with the acidic impurities like SiO2, basic flux are required. Always remember this thing: flux plus gangue is equal to slag. So flux slag definitions might be used in the fill in the blanks type questions. Okay. So students, we are in the third step. Third step means, first of all, what we have done is we have extracted the ore from the minerals. Then the ore which we have got, we have done the concentration or the benefaction process, in which we have studied the flotation, leaching, and magnetic separation, hydraulic washing. Now the third step comes, that after the benefaction of the ore, after the concentration of ore, what will we do? We do the extraction of the metal from the concentrated ore. Now further, this contains two steps. The first is the conversion of ore into metal oxide, and then second is reduction of the metal oxide to free metal. Because what happen is, I have previously also told you that if you want to extract any metal, the very best way is to reduce its metallic oxide, which can be easily done by carbon, coke. We will study later in this chapter only. So the very first step is saying that conversion of ore into metal oxide, that means it is also known as de-electronation of ore. De-electronation of ore can be achieved by two methods. You must have learned these two steps in your lower classes, that is the roasting and the calcination. What is the roasting? You are roasting the chicken, like roasting chicken. And calcination. Calcination means in the presence of limited supply or no supply of air. But in the roasting means your roast means strongly presence of air. So process of heating the concentrated ore strongly in presence of air. Many of the students confuse between the roasting and the calcination definition. So that's why I am speaking again and again that to roast the chicken means that you have to give the large amount of heat in the presence of the air. So the process of heating the concentrated ore strongly in the presence of the air at the temperature below its melting point. First point. Second point, this process is generally used to convert sulfide ores into the metallic oxides. Third point, changes taking place during roasting are moisture is removed, impurities like sulfur, arsenic, phosphorus are removed in the form of the gaseous oxides. For example, S plus O2 gives SO2. Now phosphorus is P4. You will going to learn later in the class 12 in the P block elements that phosphorus exists in the form of P4. P4 plus 5O2 gives 2P2O5. Then sulfide ores are converted into metallic oxide, which we have already done in this point. So like example is given, 2ZnS plus 3O2 gives 2ZnO plus 2SO2. Now the thing common between the roasting and calcination is that it can come for the 1 marks in the filling the blanks, that these both process occurs in the reverberatory furnace. What kind of furnace? This one, reverberatory furnace. It is the reverberatory furnace. Both roasting and calcination process occur in this furnace only. It's a 1 marks question which has been asked. No need to learn the diagram, no need to getting into the details of the diagram, just you need to remember this word, reverberatory furnace. So now moving on to the points which are related to calcination. So in the calcination, what we will do is the process of heating an ore in a limited supply of air or in absence of air at a temperature just below its melting point. So the first point of difference lies between the calcination and the roasting is calcination occurs in the limited supply and the roasting occurs in the excess amounts of supply of the air. During calcination, following changes takes place. The first one is the moisture is removed. Basically the moisture is also removed in the roasting process also. B point, volatile impurities are expelled, and the third point is the carbonate ores get converted into oxides. In the roasting, you have studied that the sulfide ores are converted into oxides, and in the calcination, which starts from C, it is used to convert what kind of ores into oxides? Carbonate, which is also starts from C. So you can just learn by this method, CC, carbonates ore gets converted into oxides. Learn these two examples, Fe2O3.2H2O. Calcination is also used to convert the hydrated ores also. That's why I have written Fe2O3.2H2O. It is not in the carbonate form, but it is the हाइड्रेटेड ओर, तो हाइड्रेटेड ओर को भी आप ऑक्साइड में कन्वर्ट कर सकते हैं, एंड द जिंक कार्बोनेट इज ऑल्सो, इट्स अ कार्बोनेट ओर ओनली. So we can easily heat, and you are seeing that we are in the first case we are getting Fe2O3, and the second case we are getting ZNO. So basically what we have done is, by the first process, from the ores we have converted that ores into the oxide forms. Now coming on to the second point, second method is the reduction of the metal oxide to the metal. So the calcined ore or the reduced ore is reduced to the metal by a suitable method. That what kind of suitable method is that? Just copy this thing. You might be sometimes you will be thinking that sir is just reading the context which is written on the board, but students, I can't help it. It is the chapter which is basically totally depends upon 5 to 10% of samajhna and 95% of rectification. So in this chapter बेसिकली इट इज द स्टूडेंट्स चैप्टर, ये इसमें आपकी ज़्यादा मेहनत लगेगी, ठीक है. बाकी इफ यू हैव फाइंडिंग एनी काइंड ऑफ डाउट्स यू कैन जस्ट आस्क मी, दिस इज नो प्रॉब्लम. सो रिडक्शन ऑफ मेटल ऑक्साइड टू मेटल, इन दिस फर्दर पॉइंट्स आई एम गोइंग टू राइट इट डाउन. So in the second step, that means the reduction of metal oxide to metal, you have to keep in mind again the two important things. First is that if you want to reduce any kind of metallic oxide to metal, and that metals are very reactive in natures, like for example alkali metals which covers lithium, sodium, potassium, or the alkaline earth metal which has the beryllium, magnesium and aluminium, then the reduction of their oxides can only be done by the electrolytic method. You have already done in the electrochemistry, that electrolytic method I am talking about. And those oxides of least reactive metals like Cu, Zn, Pb, Mn, they are reduced by a number of reducing agents, and the most common reducing agent used is carbon, which is coke or carbon monoxide. And this particular heading is also known by the term pyrometallurgy, again a 1 mark definition, which says that the process of extracting the metal by heating the metal oxide with a suitable reducing agent is called pyrometallurgy. This lecture we will going to study about the metallurgy or the extraction of the iron from its ore. Iron, students, is the second most abundant element. Just mark this point. Now what are the steps we are going to do in this extractions are written as follows, and remember that this kind of question will always come for 3 marks, whether it is ISC, whether it is CBSE. So the important ores of iron, first you have to mention that from where you can basically extract the ores, from where you can exactly extract the iron, which is the chief ore. I must tell you the basic main chief ore from where you extract the iron is this hematite. All the common names, all the chemical formulas should be learned very sincerely, because it can be asked for 1 marks. So hematite is Fe2O3, which is also known as red oxide of iron. Siderite is the carbonate ore, FeCO3. Limonite is the hydrate oxide ore of the iron, Fe2O3.3H2O. Magnetite, its name itself says that it is a magnetic oxide of iron, Fe3O4. Iron pyrite is the sulfide ore, FeS2. Now coming to the process, the extraction of the cast iron. Sooner you will be come across 3 types of iron, that is the cast iron, wrought iron, as well as the steel. Cast iron is sometimes very close to the pig iron, but then there is a slight difference between these two. We will study in detail about these 3 types of iron, cast iron. So the extraction of the cast iron from the hematite involves the following steps. There are basically 3 steps, main 3 steps are there. That the first one is the concentration, second one is the roasting, and third one is the smelting. So very first process, that is the first is the concentration. You have already studied in the first two lectures that what we have to do is you have to take the ore, you have to crush it to the fine powder, which is also known as pulverization. Then what we have to do? We have to do its concentration. Concentration, let's say for example, if we are dealing with the iron pyrite, so it is a sulfide ore. The sulfide ore is mainly done by the froth flotation process. If it is magnetite, that D1 magnetite, then it has a magnetic property, so its concentration can be done by the magnetic separation process, which consists of the electromagnetic rhodes, and one of the electromagnetic rhodal consists of the magnet. Remember, we have already discussed in the lecture 2. Now the second step, after once you are completed with the concentration of the ore, what we have to do is the roasting. Roasting means you have to heat the ore in the excess of air with the little coke present inside the reverberatory furnace. Reverberatory furnace, I have already shown you the image in the previous lecture. Now now doing the roasting, we are getting some various points for the roasting. It is as follows. I have to go for the next slide. So now you can notice that what are the main advantages of the roasting in this process. There are mainly 4. The first one is that if any ferrous oxide can be converted into ferric oxide, this will avoid the slag formation. So ferrous oxide changes to ferric oxide, and thus its conversion into ferrous silicate is avoided. By FeO plus O2 gives Fe2O3 is a reaction. Next, you have already studied that moisture, arsenic, phosphorus, etc. are removed by their oxidation. Remember that phosphorus reaction, P4 plus O2 gives what? P4O10. Then the C's, ore become porous and hence easily reducible. D, carbonate ore, if any present, can change it into iron oxide, like FeCO3. When heated, it will give you FeO plus CO2, and FeO then further reacts with the excess amount of oxygen to give you Fe2O3. Now coming on to the smelting process. The third process is the smelting. So students, moving on to the most important part, that is the smelting. It's given that we have to make the use of the blast furnace. Blast furnace is used for the smelting process in the iron metallurgy. 3 main things we are taking over here. One is the roasted ore, second is the desulfurized coke, and third one is the limestone. Remember these 3 things. One is the roasted ore, second is the desulfurized coke, and the third one is limestone. They have the ratio 8:4:1. Write it here itself. 8 part of this, 4 part of this, and 1 part of limestone. So remember this, that in the blast furnace we take the roasted ore plus desulfurized coke plus limestone in the ratio 8:4:1. Now I am showing you the pic of the blast furnace. Kindly have a look over it. This is the blast furnace. Just take a screenshot. Okay, taken. Now after seeing this, just see the image. So basically the charge which we have taken in the blast furnace, which consists of, again I am saying, which consists of the ore, coke and limestone in the 8:4:1, is introduced in the furnace by lowering the cup and cone arrangement. Now blast furnace consists of 3 phases. It has 3 parts. First one, it is written over there, a double cup and cone arrangement. second one is the shaft, and third one is the hearth. Hearth is not written over here. We have to move on to the next slide to know about what is hearth is all about. So what I am saying is that double cup and cone arrangement, you just see over here once again, the upper portion is the double cup and cone arrangement, है ना. तो चार्ज यहां पे इंट्रोड्यूस किया जाता है. देखिए चार्ज में लिखा भी हुआ है ओर प्लस कोक प्लस लाइमस्टोन. So from the above, this charge has been introduced by lowering the cup and cone arrangement, and at the same time the furnace is lit and a hot blast of air, which is heated about 1000 Kelvin, is sent upwards through the tires. Tires is TUYERES. These are the tires. Kindly once again have a look over here. This lower portion is the tires. यहां से hot gases air भेजी जाती है. The blast of air for this purpose is obtained by heating air in the series of preheaters. वरना 1000 केल्विन को प्राप्त करना आसान नहीं होगा. So the temperature near the top of the furnace is around 523 Kelvin, while in the bottom it is 2170 Kelvin. Just imagine the heat inside this blast furnace. एक तरीके की भट्टी की तरह होती है हिंदी में अगर बोलें तो. ठीक है. So let's coming on to the details of the blast furnace. The first one is a double cup and cone arrangement. I have shown you it is in the top. So it is at the top of the furnace. It is used to introduce the charge into the furnace. Charge means roasted ore, desulfide coke and the limestone. It also prevents the exit of gases during the charging. The charge is fed at the cup, and when it is full, the cone is depressed. Second part is the shaft. What is shaft is saying that it is formed by joining two cones. The upper one is called the body and the lower is called the boss. The upper part, at the upper part of the furnace, there is a hole through which the hot burnt mixture of waste gases escape. And what in the lower part? In the lower part, there are opening for the insertion of water cooled pipes called tires. अभी आपको दिखाया था tires कहाँ है, through which a blast of hot air is sent upwards in the furnace. So clear with the somewhat, are you getting my point that I am just explaining you that what is blast furnace and what does it contains and how does it going to work. So in this slide we have studied about the two important things. One is the double cup and cone arrangement where the charge has been put or fed up, and till the cup is full, then as soon as it is full, the cone is depressed downwards. Second one is the shaft, which consists of further contains two things. One is the upper part is the body and the lower one is called the boss. The upper one is consists of the hole through which the hot burnt waste gases escapes out, and the lower part is used for the opening for the insertion of the water cooled pipes called tires, जहां से आप गर्म हवा फेंकते हैं. About 1000 Kelvin is used. So now coming up to the third part of the blast furnace, that is the hearth. So the third part is the hearth, H-E-A-R-T-H. This is the lowest part of the furnace, and it is provided with basically the two holes. One is for the removal of the lighter slag and other for the removal of metal. As you can see here in the diagram, this is the one hole and this is the second hole, which has been denoted by S and H. है ना. एकदम लोवेस्ट पार्ट देखिए आप लोग, मोल्टेन स्लैग S से निकल रहा है और H से मोल्टेन मेटल निकल रहा है. So that is nothing but the earth. Now for the 1 marks question, I have make you written the 3 points. One is it has been frequently asked that what is the function of coke. So it is basically act as a reducing agent as well as a fuel. What is the function of hot blast of air? It act as a supporter of combustion. And finally the function of lime, it act as a flux and helps to remove SiO2 impurities in the form of slag, CaSiO3. You must be remembering that flux plus gang is equal to slag. Now we are going to study about the important reactions which are taking place in the blast furnace. Let's have a look. So the important aspect is about the reactions which are taking place inside the blast furnace. Here we are going to cover the 3 important zones. First one is the base of the furnace, then second we will talk about the middle of the furnace, and the last is the top of the furnace. Considering the base of the furnace, we have 2 zones, zone of combustion and zone of fusion. And the zone of combustion, as you can see, that the coke which you have taken as a reducing agent or as a fuel is reacting with the oxygen to form CO2. And this reaction will be exothermic reaction, and the temperature will rises up to about 2200 Kelvin. The carbon is nothing but the coke. And in the zone of fusion, you can see that CO2 which has formed at the zone of combustion itself reacts further with the coke to form the carbon monoxide. But this reaction, mind it, is an endothermic reaction. It's written over there. CO2 plus C gives 2CO. In bracket it is written endothermic, and the temperature here will decreases. It will decrease up to around 1473 or to 1573 Kelvin. The carbon monoxide which is formed above makes ensure or it reduces the Fe2O3 if any present to iron, and the fusion of iron occurs over here. Then the next 2 reactions you can learn it, or you can just straight away learn the last reaction, that is the Fe2O3 plus 3CO gives 2Fe plus 3CO2. Clear? Now coming up to the middle of the furnace. So next one is the middle of the furnace. Previously we have studied the base of the furnace, where we have seen the 2 important reactions. One is the Ce plus O2 gives CO2, then CO2 reacts with coke to gives carbon monoxide. Now in the middle of the furnace, which is also known as zone of slag formation, please remember this name, zone of slag formation. Middle of the furnace को कहते हैं. In this zone, the temperature is about 1100 Kelvin, and the limestone decomposes to give CO and CO2. This CO reacts with impurities like SO2 to form slag, CaSiO3, calcium silicate. The reactions are given there. CaSiO3 on heating gives CaO plus CO2. CO plus SiO2 gives CaSiO3. This line is very important and can be asked in the various form. Okay? This is very important. And what happens in there? Silicates, phosphates, magnates present and impurities in the ore are reduced to silicon, phosphorus and manganese respectively. Example like P4O10, phosphorus containing oxides, when reacts with the reducing agent coke will give you P4 plus 10CO. Similarly, silicate SiO2 plus 2C gives Si plus 2CO. Then after that, the 2 reactions given over here tell us that if any kind of sulfur is present in the coke, this sulfur comes from the coke. Sulfur present in the coke reacts with the iron Fe to form FeS, which further reacts with CaO. This CaO has came from where? From the decomposition of calcium carbonate to form CaS, which passes into the slag. this CaS formed will passes into the slag. Now coming up to the top of the furnace. Now the last part is the top of the furnace, which is also known as the zone of reduction. In this part of the furnace, temperature is now more reduced. If you remember that we have started with the bottom of the furnace where the temperature was all around 2200 Kelvin. Then it has reduced in the middle of the furnace to around 1100 Kelvin. Now as soon as we reaches the top of the furnace, which is also known as the zone of reduction, the temperature is near about 673 to 873 Kelvin. You know that at the bottom of the furnace where we have done the zone of fusion, the carbon monoxide has been produced, and this carbon monoxide is also being produced in the middle of the furnace at the last reaction which we have studied, in which CaS has been sent to the slag plus Fe plus Co. So the upcoming carbon monoxide reduces iron oxide to spongy iron, and this spongy iron will moves down the furnace and melts in the zone of fusion. Zone of fusion, you remember na, that bottom part. It dissolves the elements like carbon, phosphorus, silicon and collects at the base of the furnace from where it is removed. Now slags, it floats. So slags which floats on the molten iron is removed from the outlet. The second last point, remember that the tire which I have shown you, the bottom part which I have shown you where the tires are there were the two holes. From the one hole the molten iron has been removed, and from the other hole some impurities have been removed. So that's what I am talking about here, is the slag which floats on the molten iron is removed from the outlet, and the molten iron obtained from the base of the blast furnace is called pig iron. Now the pig iron and the cast iron has a bit of difference, we will discuss here, but some points you need more to understand in the zone of reduction. They are as follows. So the continuation with the previous point, the next point is that the waste gases coming out of the furnace contains CO, CO2 and N2, and this mixture of gases is also called blast furnace gas or the flue gas. It is also written at the bottom of the board. Blast furnace gas is mainly used for preheating the blast of air to be admitted near the bottom. If you remember, when I talked about the bottom of the furnace, I told you that the blast of air for about 1000 Kelvin has been blown in the zone of combustion. Now you can connect that how does that blast of air which has been heated up to 1000 Kelvin is being heated. Again I am repeating this point, the waste gases coming out of the furnace containing CO, CO2 and N2, this mixture is called blast furnace gas, and it is mainly used for preheating the blast of air to be admitted near the bottom. Now what are the products from the blast furnace? It is categorized into three parts. One is the pig iron, second is the slag, and third is the flue gas. Flue gas is nothing but the blast furnace gas only. So the pig iron is what? Pig iron is somewhat different from the cast iron. As I told you, I will just explain you in the next slide. The pig iron, the molten iron obtained from the blast furnace, which contains 2 to 5% dissolved carbon and small amounts of silicon, manganese, phosphorus and sulfur. The molten metal is cast into small cylindrical molds called pigs. यहाँ के जो molds होते हैं वो pigs की shape की तरह होते हैं, and hence the name given pig iron. Slag, second product is the slag, and slag mainly consists of CaSiO3. You have already studied, and this CaSiO3 also contains small amount of calcium aluminate, which I have written the formula over there, 2CO.Al2O3. That is calcium aluminate. And also calcium aluminosilicates, which is given in the formula 3CO.Al2O3.SiO2. It is crushed and used as a ballast for railroads, and when it is mixed with tar, it is used to make the roads. The third important product is the flue gas, which is also known as blast furnace gas, which comes out from the top of the furnace, and it contains 10% CO2, 25% CO, 58% N2, and it also contains some amount of hydrocarbons around 6.5%. Now we are going to study about the different forms of iron. So let us now study about the different commercial varieties of iron. So it has been classified into three. First one is the cast iron, second is the wrought iron, and third is the steel. The important thing which you have to learn in this is the percentage of the carbon which each contains. Lesser the amount of the carbon percentage, more pure form it will be. Like wrought iron means the second one, it is the purest form of the iron because it contains the lowest percentage of carbon, that is 0.25%. Then comes steel, and then the last one is the cast iron. It contains 2 to 4.5% carbon along with the impurities like of sulfur, phosphorus, silicon, manganese, etc. It is the most impure form of iron. Why? Because carbon content is very much more. Due to the impurity, it is very hard and brittle and it cannot be welded. Whereas wrought iron, it is the purest form, it contains 0.25% of carbon, it is soft, malleable and ductile, and it can also be welded. So the cast iron and the wrought iron are both opposite. But the thing is, what is the difference between the cast iron and the pig iron? Cast iron has slightly lower carbon content, about 3%. It is made from pig iron. Pig iron is that which we have got it from the blast furnace. So it is made from pig iron by melting pig iron with the scrap iron and coke using hot air blast. And the third one is the steel. This properties is between those of cast iron and the wrought iron, and its carbon content is also between these two, that is it's from 0.05 to 1.5%, and carbon which also contains the impurities like sulfur and phosphorus. So here students, we have ended up the extraction of the iron. Next we will going to see the extraction of the copper, aluminium and silver. About the extraction of copper. Look students, I am again repeating the same thing, that these questions will come for the 3 marks, and you have to write in the similar way in which I am making to write the notes. The board, the examiner wants the steps, and these steps should be explained in the summarized way. And if I have already explained you these points, I am not writing the theory once again. You have to refer the notes previously which you have written. So first of all, what we have to mention is the ores by which copper can be easily and conveniently extracted from the minerals. And the chief ore of the copper is the first one which I have written, copper pyrites, fool's gold, from which we are going to extract the copper in this lecture. Rest of the ores are also important because their chemical formulas and their names, their colors might be asked in the examination. So the second one is, as you see, it's cuprite, Cu2O, ruby copper, copper glans, Cu2S, malachite, CuCO3 dot CuOH whole square, then azurite, which is deep blue in color, CuCO3 dot CuOH whole square. Now the extraction process starts with the step 1, that is crushing and grinding. Crushing and grinding, then after it comes concentration. This fourth flotation is basically the step 2, this is step 3 and this is step 4. So the step 1, crushing and grinding, means pulverization, which we have already covered in the previous lecture. Then second process comes, that after crushing and grinding, what we have to do is the concentration of the ore, that is to remove the impurities, the unwanted earthy particles, that is the gangue which has been stuck with this ore. So the concentration of ore is usually done by this Froth flotation process. And why we are taking this process? Because we are using the copper pyrite. Copper pyrite is the sulfide ore. So for the sulfide ores, you know that the best method is the Froth flotation process. Now in the step 3 is the roasting, and in the roasting again I am not writing out the points, but I have already made you understand, I have already written in the previous slides what, that the concentrated ore in this roasting is heated in the reverberatory furnace. Remember, reverberatory furnace, I have shown you the image, and it is heated in the axis of air. And what all the basically conclusion which you conclude from this roasting, that number 1 is that moisture is removed, secondly is the volatile impurities are removed, third, oil sticking to the ore get vaporized, and the most importantly that the copper pyrites are partially converted into sulfides of copper and iron. I repeat once more, the most important point here in this, please write it down, that copper pyrites are partially converted into sulfides of copper and iron. So the reaction here, if we write, it says Cu FeS2 plus O2 gives Cu2S plus Fes plus SO2. Now the Fes which you are getting over here is partially oxidized to ferrous oxide. So again we are writing this reaction, 2 Fes plus 3 O2 gives 2 FeO plus SO2. So you can basically say that the cuprous sulfide remains mostly unchanged. Thus the roasted ore mainly contains a mixture of cuprous sulfide, ferrous sulfide and ferrous oxide. Remember this thing, I am repeating once more, that the roasted ore mainly contains a mixture of cuprous sulfide, ferrous sulfide and ferrous oxidized. Cuprous sulfide, ferrous sulfide, and this is what? Ferrous oxide. So the very next step is the smelting process. Now see what we are going to do in smelting. Now in the smelting, as we have done in the iron extraction, remember the lecture number 3, we did the iron extraction and we also did the smelting over there itself in the blast furnace. So here also the roasted ore is mixed with the reducing agent, that is the powdered ore, and will be heated strongly in the blast furnace itself. But the main thing is that there is some issue or problem. So before introducing into the blast furnace, we have to read these 3 statements. Copper has more affinity for sulfur than for oxygen. Therefore, any copper oxide formed during roasting reacts with the iron sulfide present in the ore and forms copper sulfide. So this is the main issue. So hence copper oxide cannot be obtained unless iron sulfide is oxidized and removed. जब आयरन सल्फाइड होएगा ही नहीं तो फिर वो रिएक्ट किसके साथ करेगा? So the main issue is that we have to remove the iron sulfide because copper will try to react with the sulfur rather than the oxygen. So if in any how case we have seen in the roasting that the copper oxide has been formed, it will immediately react with the iron sulfide and will turns into copper sulfide again. So we have to remove first of all iron sulfide. It should be firstly oxidized and removed. So iron sulfide is removed by making use of the fact that iron sulfide is oxidized more easily than copper sulfide. So this is the advantage of this fact, that what we have to stop is, try to understand once again, copper wants that it should be react with oxygen to form the copper oxide, or the roasted ore should contains the copper oxide, so that it can be easily reduced by the reducing agent and we can easily extract the copper. But the main problem we are lying over here is that copper is more reactive towards the sulfur rather than that for the oxygen. So during the roasting, the iron sulfide which has been formed will get reacts with the copper oxide or the copper to form the copper sulfide. So if you want that copper oxide should not react with iron sulfide, what we have to do, we have to oxidize the iron sulfide and we have to remove that particular thing. Now iron sulfide has some important fact when compared to the copper sulfide, that iron sulfide is more easily oxidized as compared to copper sulfide. So using this fact we can easily remove this. So now coming to the blast furnace, it looks like the same thing which we have done. I have shown the image of that blast furnace while doing the extraction of the iron. So again the roasted ore is mixed with the powdered ore and the sand and is heated strongly in a blast furnace, and then what happens? Then what happens is that at 1273 Kelvin, which I have written over there, okay, at this temperature the ferrous sulfide is oxidized to ferrous oxide, means 2 FeS plus 3 O2 gives 2 FeO plus 2 SO2. The ferrous oxide, that means this FeO, further combines with the silica SiO2, which is acting as a flux, to form a fusible slag, ferrous silicate FeSiO3. Now the important thing about this slag is that it is always lighter. So being lighter, it forms the upper layer and is removed through the outlet from time to time. So now after doing the smelting, we are doing the step 5th of the extraction of copper, and it is known as bessemerization. Why this process is known as bessemerization? Because this is done in the special converter which is known as Bessemer converter. It is written over here, Bessemer converter. And how does it looks like? Just have a view. You are getting the clear picture of what is Bessemer converter. Now 4 things which you have to remember is, the first one is the flame, second one is the, you can see that where is the tires, third one the molten matte, and fourth one is the molten copper. Okay. Just have a look on these 4 things: flame, molten matte, molten copper and the tires. Now, first of all you have to note that what is this word matte which I have used over here, or you can say it's a matte. Remember in the blast furnace, in the roasting step, smelting step, sorry, cuprous sulfide containing some traces of ferrous sulfide is called copper matte. Remember this 1 marks question, important. Cuprous sulfide containing some traces of ferrous sulfide is called copper matte, which forms the lower layer in the blast furnace. Now this copper matte which is basically molten in this state, is taken into a small pear-shaped converter called Bessemer converter, and from this stage onwards the Bessemerization steps occur. What we are doing, the main thing, and what the main observations we are up to, the three observations. These are the three basic things which you are seeing in this process. What is happening, that a hot blast or air mixed with sand is blown into the molten mass through tires. I have shown you where the tires are, and the following changes takes place. First, any FeS still present is removed as slag. The reactions are very important. 2 FeS plus 3 O2 gives 2 FeO plus 2 SO2. Then FeO reacts with SiO2 gives FeSiO3 as a slag, and slag being lighter forms the upper layer and it will remove from time to time. Any sulfur, arsenic, antimony still present leaves as oxide. After reacting with the oxygen, they will definitely move as the gases SO2, arsenic oxide, etc. Third step, self-reduction of cuprous oxide to copper by cuprous sulfite. So the reaction goes as follows, that 2Cu2S plus 3O2 gives 2Cu2O plus 2SO2. Then 2CO2 plus Cu2S again gives you the molten copper. Now write one point, that the copper metal which you have produced here in the molten state, they will fall below the tires and thus escapes the oxidizing action of the blast. And remember, the completion of the reaction, write this thing, please make a note. The completion of the reaction can be judged when there is the appearance of green color. Please underline this thing. The completion of the reaction will be judged when there is the appearance of green color. What is that green color? It will be definitely produced by the vapors of copper. Now, the blast of air and sand is stopped and the converter is tilted to get the metal. When the metal is allowed to cool, the dissolved sulfur dioxide escapes, producing blisters on the metal surface. And this copper obtained is called blister copper, and it is about 98% pure. What we are doing is, हम लोग लास्ट स्टेप में क्या कर रहे हैं, जैसे ही रिएक्शन खत्म हो रही है, और रिएक्शन खत्म होने का एहसास कैसे पता चल रहा है कि कॉपर के जो वेपर्स निकल रहे हैं वो ग्रीनिश कलर के होंगे, और जो हम एयर भेज रहे थे, दिस हॉट ब्लास्ट एयर, वी विल स्टॉप सेंडिंग दिस and we will tilt this converter, and this molten metal will flows down and it gets separated. When the metal is allowed to cool, the dissolved SO2 will escape, forming the blisters on the metal surface, and this is known as the blister copper. This blister copper is 98% pure. Okay. So now the thing is, it can be asked in the 1 marks question in this particular Bessemerization process, that what is the copper matte? What is the copper matte? Copper sulfide containing some traces of ferrous sulfide is known as copper matte. And where does it found? It has been found in the lower layer. Yeah, it forms the lower layer of the blast furnace. And what is the blister copper? Blister copper is the 98% pure copper which we have obtained after Bessemerization. So copper matte is the thing we get after smelting, and the blister copper is the 98% pure copper which we have get after Bessemerization. It is done in the Bessemer converter, that's why the name has been given. Okay, now coming on to the refining procedure. The last step, step 6, is the refining. So step 6 is the refining, and it can be done basically by the two things, poling and electrolytic refining. In this we are talking about the poling. So basically what happens in the previous step was, that means during the bisomerization, we got the blister copper which was 98% pure. Now if we have to increase the purity level of the copper, we have to do the refining. So the blister copper obtained from the Bessemer converter contains these many impurities: sulfur, arsenic, antimony, tin, Fe, Pb, lead, zinc, Ag, Au. So many impurities are there, and it can be purified by the two methods. First one is the poling. The blister copper is heated strongly in a reverberatory furnace in the presence of the excess of air, somewhat resembling to the roasting process, somewhat, okay. So because in roasting also what you do, you take the particular ore in the reverberatory furnace and you have to heat in the excess of the air. So what going to happen is the sulfur, arsenic, antimony will removed as the oxides, and rest of the impurities left like Fe, Pb, Sn, Zn changes to oxides and can be removed. The third step is somewhat different. This is the main thing. Some of the copper also changes to cuprous oxide. This is reduced to copper by stirring the molten metal with green poles of wood, which produces hydrocarbons necessary to reduce copper oxide into copper. So basically what we are doing is, we are mixing the copper oxide with the hydrocarbons so that copper oxide gets reduced to copper. And this copper is known as tough pitch copper, and it is 99.5% pure. Clear? Now coming up to the electrolytic refining. So the next refining process is the electrolytic refining, and this method is used to get the metal of high degree of purity. This method you have already studied in the electrochemistry chapter itself, when you take the copper as an anode and you dipped it in the copper sulfate solution, Cu in CuSO4. So what are the anode cathode reactions? Remember students, the copper gets oxidized, Cu gives Cu2 plus 2 electron, and in the cathode the reaction becomes reverse. That means Cu2 plus 2 electron gives Cu, and what happens is that we get the pure copper. The copper from the anode, you can say that the anode rod will slowly get dissolved into the electrolytic solution, whereas the cathode, which is basically made up of the pure metal copper, will deposit the pure copper from the solution by the reduction method. That means Cu2 plus 2 electrons gives Cu, and its weight gets increased slowly and slowly. So here itself it's written over here that a block of impure copper metal is made the anode, and the thin plate of pure copper metal is made as cathode, and CuSO4 is taken as electrolyte. So when electric current is passed through the electrolytic solution, the impure copper from the anode, because in the anode oxidation occurs, goes into the solution. That means you can write the reaction also, Cu gives Cu2 plus 2 electrons. This reaction happens in anode, and the pure copper from the solution deposits on the cathode, and the cathode reaction you can write Cu2 plus 2 electron gives copper. Now what about the rest elements which has been stuck with the copper, because these many impurities were present over there. So if the more electropositive metals are there like zinc, nickel, Fe, that will remain in the solution, while the less electropositive metals like Ag and Au will settle near the anode as the anode mud. So here we have completed the extraction procedure for the copper, and you have to learn all these steps for the long 3 marks question. The extraction of silver and so again the steps which we have studied already in the extraction of iron, we will follow the same procedure. That first we have to write the important ores which are basically required for the extraction of the silver, or from where the silver can be extracted easily. So they are written as follows. In the A itself written argentite Ag2S, then copper silver glance, ruby silver, horn silver AgCl. You have to learn the formulas as well as the name. In this extraction we are taking the argentite. I am repeating again, we are taking the argentite, that is the Ag2S, है ना, sulfur containing silver containing sulfur, either process. So in the step 1 it is written that crushing of the ore we have to do using the ball mills. Then we do the concentration of ore. Now since it contains sulfide, since it is a sulfide ore, so we will do the froth flotation, and you have to explain the froth flotation process within 2 to 3 lines. It's very important. I am not explaining here itself because I have already given you the notes in the previous lecture. Then the step 3 comes the leaching process. Again, for 5 to 6 lines you have to explain the Mac-Arthur Forrest cyanide process. Remember, after the froth flotation we done the leaching of the silver and the gold. The same reactions you have to write here itself in this leaching process. Then the 4th steps is the new one, that is the precipitation or the recovery of the silver. Now if you remember, or you just do that, turn up your pages and see that while doing the leaching of the silver we get the product, we get the complex NaAgCN whole square. So this complex is further reacted with the zinc so as to precipitate the silver. You can see there in the product that 2Ag precipitate has been left. Now in the step 5 fusion is going to take place. Fusion means in this the precipitated silver is filtered, washed, dried and then fused with borax or KNO3 to get bright metallic silver, and this process removes any unreacted zinc left. Reaction Zn plus KNO3 gives KNO2 plus ZnO. Now in the next step, the next step is the purification. This purification is similar than that which we have done in the extraction of the copper. If you remember, we have used the electrolytic refining process in the copper itself, and again we are using the same process. The anode here is made up of impure block of silver, as we did in copper itself. Cathode is made up of thin sheet of pure silver, and the electrolyte contains the solution of silver nitrate containing 1% HNO3 or potassium ferrocyanide. Then the anode and cathode reactions which are going to take place is again the same concept which you have already studied in the electrochemistry. Then another topic is about the extraction of silver from the argentiniferous lead. Then what is argentiniferous lead? I have written the definition. Galena, which is PbS, is an important ore of lead, and lead obtained from galena contains about 1% Ag. So this lead containing a very little quantity of silver is called argentiferous lead. एक मार्क्स का क्वेश्चन आ सकता है, argentiferous lead. So the Ag can be obtained from the argentiferous lead by either the Parkes or the Pattinson's process. These two processes have never been asked till now, so there might be the probability that they can ask. So let's have a quick review on these two processes. So a very simple process which you are coming across is the Parkes process. Now in the previous slide what we have learned is about the argentiferous lead. What is argentiferous lead? Quick. Lead containing a very small quantity of silver. Okay, lead, silver. What we are getting? Lead, silver. Now what we have to do is we have to separate these two things. We have to separate the lead from silver. So what we are going to do is we are going to add zinc in it. What we are going to add? Zinc. It is according to the Parkes. What will the zinc do? It will try to react with either of the two substances, or either the zinc or either the lead. So basically, either the silver or either the lead. So basically what happens is silver is more soluble than Pb. Ag is more soluble in zinc than compared to Pb. So it will form an alloy, ZnAg alloy. But what about Pb? It remains in the molten state. Now the mass which we have obtained is allowed to cool. So the ZnAg, that alloy, gets solidified while the Pb still remains in the molten state. Now the ZnAg alloy is strongly heated. What will happen? Zinc, being more volatile, will distills off in the form of vapors, while the Ag is obtained in the free state. So this Ag can be separated, but it has still the probability of containing the lead in a small amount as an impurity, which can be further removed by the cupellation process. So let's have a look. In this process, commercial lead is melted in iron pots and about 1% of Zn is added so that molten mass is obtained. Since Ag is about 300 times more soluble in zinc than in Pb, most of the Ag present in commercial lead get dissolved in zinc and forms ZnAg alloy, while Pb remains in the molten state. Now this mass which is containing ZnAg alloy and molten Pb is allowed to cool, which results that ZnAg alloy is solidified while Pb remains in the molten state. Now this ZnAg alloy which is solidified is strongly heated, due to which zinc, being more volatile, get distills off in the form of the vapors, while the Ag is obtained in the free state. Now this Ag still contains a little amount of Pb as an impurity, which is removed by the cupellation process. What is this? We will going to see it later. So it's all about the Parkes process. Give 1 or 2 readings, you will just understood the concept. It's very easy. So next is the Pattinson's process. It's more over the same as what we have done in the Parkes process. It also believes in that one of the things remains in the molten state and the other becomes solidifies. It also forms the alloy kind of thing. You just see over here that what happens. This process is used when the argentiferous lead contains Ag less than 2.5%. Now they will increase this 2.5%, they will try to. In the process, the percentage of Ag in the argentiferous lead can be increased up to 2.5%. This increase is made by melting the argentiferous lead and then cooling it slowly. तो यहाँ पे melting cooling होता रहेगा. Lead solidifies but Ag remains in the molten state. Again the same point comes as we did in the Parkes process. Lead is removed and the molten mass left behind is richer in the Ag. This process of melting and cooling is repeated again and again till whole the molten mass solidifies simultaneously, and now it is subjected to cupellation to remove the lead. What does the cupellation do basically? So I am just going to give you the idea that the silver which is obtained by this Parkes process or the Pattinson process contain basically Pb as the main impurity. Now this impurity is further removed by the cupellation process, which consists, write it down, which consists of heating the impure silver in a cupel, C-U-P-E-L. Cupel means basically a bowl kind of thing, in a reverberatory furnace in a blast of air. So what you are doing is the impurity, that is the lead, which is being removed through the cupellation process. What does it involves? It basically involves the heating of the impure silver in a cupel in a reverberatory furnace in a blast of air. So lead gets oxidized to PbO. Lead gets, write it down, lead gets oxidized to PbO, which is carried away by the blast of air along with the hot gases, and the pure Ag metal is left behind in the cupel. Cupel bole to a kind of dish, a kind of beaker. Let's proceed to the refining of metals. The process of purifying the crude metal is called refining. The name itself justifying the topic. There comes 3 to 4 refining of metals methods like distillation, liquefaction, electrolytic refining, but these 3 we have already studied. Like say electrolytic refining, that copper extraction we have studied. Silver extraction, we also do the same procedure. But the zone refining is somewhat different. What is written over there, that zone refining is also called the fractional crystallization method, and it is used to obtain the metals of very high purity. Example, those of semiconductor, silicon and germanium. What is the principle? Very important, 1 marks में पूछा जा सकता है. It is based on the principle that impurity has greater solubility in the liquid than in the solid state of the metal. So this is how the zone refining of metals look like. There is a pure metal side, there is an impure metal side, there are induction coil moving heaters, it contains the molten zone. So what happened there is, just take a screenshot. What happens in this procedure? A circular mobile heater, you can see over here a circular mobile heater, or you can say the induction coil moving heaters. It is fitted around the rod of an impure metal at one end. The heater is slowly moved along the rod and the metal near the heater melts. As the heater moves forward, the pure metal crystallizes out of the melt while the impurity. So the metal near the heater melts. As the heater moves forward, the pure metal crystallizes out of the melt while the impurities pass into the adjacent molten zone. The process is repeated several times when the impurities are completely swept into one end of the rod, which is finally discarded. So the most important method which has been frequently asked is the vapor phase refining. You can never leave this topic while preparing the metallurgy, because the Mond process, as written in the second last line, and the Van Arkel method has been asked several times in any kind of competition as well as in boards paper. What does the vapor phase refining means? That you just take a metal, mixed it with a compound so that they together make a volatile compound. Now this volatile compound is heated and it is decomposed to give the pure metal. This is the principle and this is the only requirement. Like example, if you see the Mond's process, nickel being an impure has been reacted with the reagent called carbon monoxide and they are heated to form a volatile complex nickel tetracarbonyl nickel. That's a complex name. And then again that volatile complex has been heated at the high temperature 450 Kelvin to give you the pure nickel plus 4 times Cu. Then the Van Arkel method is used for the refining of zirconium and titanium. This type of question has been asked in 1 marks, that refining of nickel is used for, done by 4 kind of process has been given. So remember, for Mond's is nickel, for Van Arkel it is zirconium and titanium. So zirconium plus 2I2 at 870 Kelvin gives Zr as I4. It is a volatile compound and again it is forming the volatile complex which is decomposed at high temperature to give you the pure zirconium. Clear? So thank you. Now we will start with the next chapter.